Welcome to Shadows After Midnight, where the darkness whispers truths too grim for daylight. Tonight, we venture into the wild, where the trees stand silent and the night hides horrors that linger long after the fire dies. These are true tales of terror from those who dared to wander too far from safety. Settle in, dim the lights, and listen closely, because once you hear these stories, the shadows may never feel the same. The Headless Horror of Harold Parker. Have you ever heard the name Harold Parker? A man so vile, so twisted in his soul, that even death refused to bring him peace. They say his crimes were so monstrous, his punishment had to match the horror he unleashed. And now, they say he walks again, without a head and without mercy. Harold Parker was born in 1782 in a quiet, fog-covered village nestled in the heart of rural England. By day, he was the village blacksmith, broad-shouldered, soot-covered, with arms like iron and a face carved from stone. People nodded respectfully as he passed, never suspecting the darkness that brewed beneath his silent demeanor. But once the forge cooled and the village sank into sleep, Harold changed. He lived alone at the edge of the woods, in a cottage surrounded by ash trees and shadows. Travelers who strayed too far from the main road would find themselves at his door, drawn in by the promise of warmth, food, or shelter. They never left. Villagers began to whisper. Rumors bloomed like rot. Tales of people disappearing without a trace. A merchant last seen passing through. A wandering preacher who never made it to the next town. A child lost in the woods. Still, no one dared confront Harold. His silence, his sighs, and something else. Something cold in his eyes, like a man who'd stared into the abyss and seen something he liked. Then came the night the village midwife vanished. She was beloved, trusted, a healer. When she didn't return home, the villagers searched the woods. They found her, or what was left of her, her body headless, arms bound with thick blackened iron wire. The signature was unmistakable. That was the moment everything changed. A mob formed. Torches, axes, fury. They stormed Harold's cottage. Inside they found horrors that no mind could comprehend. A trapdoor to a basement soaked in dried blood, tools twisted into grotesque shapes, a pile of personal items, jewelry, shoes, teeth. And in the center of the room, a wooden table stained black with old death. They dragged Harold into the clearing. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. He only stared at them as if amused, as if they were the ones to be pitied. No trial, no mercy. With a rusted blade taken from his own forge, they severed his head beneath the cold gaze of the moon. His body collapsed to the ground. The villagers buried his corpse deep in the woods, far from consecrated ground. They burned his cottage to ash. They believed it was over. They were wrong. The first to see him was a hunter decades later. He returned to town pale and trembling, babbling about a figure in the woods, 7 feet tall, headless, carrying a bloodied blacksmith's hammer. The sightings increased. A couple lost on a hike found claw marks, deep gouges in the trunks of trees. A child playing near the edge of the forest swore he saw a man with no face standing between the trees, motionless, watching. Animals refused to go near the site of the old forge. Birds avoided the trees there. Cameras malfunctioned. Campfires died suddenly, without wind. And then, people began to disappear again. No bodies, just signs, a trail of blood, a shattered compass, a crushed phone. The forest seemed to close in on itself, as if protecting something or someone. Some believe Harold's spirit was too twisted for hell to claim, that his hatred bound him to this world. Others say his body was buried wrong and his soul couldn't find rest. But many believe he chose not to move on. Locals now refer to him only as the Headless One. They say he walks with slow, heavy steps, dragging the very chains that once bound his victims. They say he appears on nights when the fog rolls low, when the firelight flickers without reason, when the woods fall utterly, deathly silent. If you hear the clink of metal in the distance, run. If your fire suddenly goes out, don't look behind you. And if you see a figure standing in the dark, tall, still, headless, pray he hasn't already seen you. Because once Harold Parker has chosen you, no one can save you. He doesn't speak. He doesn't think. He only remembers. Story, often told by the fire on camping nights, stands out. A group of college students, unaware of the legend, pitched their tents deep in the Harold Parker woods. That night, one by one, they were awakened, not by sound, but by the sudden absence of it. No crickets, no wind, just a dead, suffocating silence. The last survivor said she saw a silhouette walking through the trees, swinging something massive. She didn't wait. She ran barefoot through the thorns and mud until she reached the road. She still has nightmares of a headless man chasing her, not running, but always getting closer. The next day, her friends were gone, their tents shredded, blood on the leaves, no bodies. The forest never gave them back. Tell me, next time you're alone by the fire, deep in the woods, and the night feels too still, will you think of Harold Parker? Will you remember the man who was so evil, even death couldn't take his soul? Will you listen for the sound of dragging chains and wonder if tonight is the night he chooses you? Because he's still out there, waiting, watching, and he has all the time in the world. The skin on the hood, there's something ancient and wrong in the woods of Tennessee. A silence that feels too deep, trees that seem to listen, and sometimes, if you stay long enough, it listens back. We were just three friends looking to disconnect, Craig, Tanner and I. No phones, no stress, just a night under the stars, with firelight and beer. We drove deep into the backcountry, further than we'd ever gone before, past the marked trails, past the signs, past reason maybe, the kind of road that doesn't show up on GPS, gravel giving way to dirt, dirt giving way to grass, until the truck stopped in a clearing surrounded by tall, whispering pines. It was perfect. We pitched our tent, stacked firewood, and opened our coolers. Laughter echoed through the trees, jokes, ghost stories, the crackle of burning logs, the kind of night that makes you forget the world. The forest was eerily calm, no rustling, no animal cries. We chalked it up to the remoteness, a place untouched. We stayed up late, too late. I remember the flames flickering low as Craig passed out near the logs, his empty bottle tipped over beside him. Tanner climbed into the tent, mumbling something incoherent. I sat there alone a bit longer, staring into the dying fire, feeling that strange hush in the trees pressing down on me. Then I crawled into the tent and shut my eyes. I don't know what time I woke up, just that it was cold, too cold. The fire had long since died, and the world outside was dim and grey. I stepped outside, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and walked toward the truck. That's when I saw it, I stopped dead. There was something on the hood, draped across it, a skin, an animal's hide, raw, pink, glistening in the pale dawn light. Its fur had been scraped clean, the edges jagged like they'd been torn with something dull. There was no head, no limbs, just a slab of meat, blood still pooling beneath it, congealing on the windshield in dark streaks. The smell hit me next, metallic, rancid, like rot left too long in the sun. And the silence, not a single bird, no wind, nothing but that awful hanging presence. I backed away, stumbled, nearly fell. Craig came out first, rubbing his eyes, then stopped in his tracks. Tanner followed, his face drained of all colour. None of us said a word. We tore down camp in silence, no breakfast, no conversation, just shaking hands and darting glances toward the trees. I remember grabbing a long stick, using it to shove the skin off the hood like it might bite me. It hit the ground with a wet slap. As I started the truck, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing, but the air felt heavier, as if something watched from between the pines. We didn't breathe until we hit asphalt again. Didn't speak until we saw gas station lights in the distance. We pulled in, needing fuel, needing a slice of reality, something normal. Inside, an old man behind the counter looked up as we entered. He took one look at us, our pale faces, our dirty clothes, the wild in our eyes, and asked, "You all been up near Devil's Hollow?" We didn't answer. He leaned forward. "You see it too, didn't you?" That's when he started talking about skinned animals found on cars, always at night, always deep in the woods. Warnings, he said, markings, a ritual older than the town itself. No one knows who does it. Some say it's people, cultists, old families, something twisted left behind. Others say it's not people at all. It's not people. He told us about a boy in the 80s who came back from a solo hike, raving about shadows that followed him home. That boy was never right again, kept his curtains shut, covered every mirror in the house. He hung himself 6 months later. Another man found his hunting cabin smeared with bloody handprints. Inside, his dog, skinned alive, not killed, just left there, breathing. Each story worse than the last. I asked why no one talked about it, why it wasn't on the news. The old man just laughed. Would you go looking if you knew something out there was watching, waiting for you to see it? I tried to forget, scrubbed the truck, bleached the hood. But every time it rained, the shape came back, faint, like a ghostly outline burned into the metal. I stopped parking it near the house, and the nights, they changed. Sometimes I'd hear things. Scratches outside the window, whispers behind the wall. Once, I found a small tuft of fur nailed to my fence. I don't have pets. Tanner moved out of town 6 months later. Said he kept seeing faces in the tree line outside his apartment. Craig never answered his phone again. I heard from someone he started sleeping in the basement. No windows. As for me, I haven't camped since. Can't even look at the woods without my skin crawling. Because I know, deep down, we weren't just unlucky. We weren't just in the wrong place. We were seen, marked, and whatever left that skin on the hood, it wanted us to know it. It could have hurt us, killed us, but it didn't. It left a message. You were here, we saw you, we let you go, but don't come back. So if you ever think about camping in the backwoods of Tennessee, remember this. When the fire dies, when the trees go still, when the silence feels like it's waiting, you're not alone. Something's watching. And if you see skin on the hood of your car, don't clean it. Don't question it. Just leave. Because the next time It might not be a warning. It might be your skin. The church in the wilderness. Some places were never meant to be found. Some buildings were never meant to be entered. And some doors were never meant to be opened. 7 days. That was the plan. A full week of off-grid survival in the wildest part of Algonquin Provincial Park. Me and Chris, two self-proclaimed adventurers trying to test our limits. No tents, no tech, just ponchos, knives, and our own stubborn pride. We called it hardcore camping, though, in hindsight, it was just recklessness wrapped in bravado. By day 4, the wilderness had started to wear us down. The cuts on our hands stung with every movement. The cold seeped into our bones at night. We hadn't seen another soul since the first day, and honestly, we liked it that way. But that morning, something changed. We'd been hiking uphill through dense, pine-heavy forest when we stumbled across it. A structure, standing motionless in the middle of nowhere. A church. It shouldn't have been there. There were no trails, no clearings, no path that could have led anyone to build it. It just sat there, tucked between thick trees like a secret kept by the earth. Its wooden exterior was grey and splintered, warped by decades of wind and rain. Moss crept up from the base like ivy veins, and a rusted iron cross leaned precariously on the roof, as if even it had tried to fall away and forget this place. We stood there, breath fogging in the cool morning air, both silently staring. Chris laughed nervously. Think they hold Sunday service out here? But even he didn't believe his own joke. The front door was heavy and sealed shut with an old iron chain wrapped tightly through the handles. The lock looked ancient, like something from a century ago. But around the back, that's where we found it. A jagged, splintered hole in the wooden wall. Big enough for a person to crawl through. Something had broken out, or in. Chris peered inside. "Dude," he whispered, "you gotta see this." Inside, the air changed. It was colder, damper, like descending into a cellar after a flood. The walls groaned faintly, like the building was breathing with us. Faint light filtered in through broken windows, casting thin beams through the dust. There were no pews, no altar, no Bibles or stained glass. Just emptiness. Except for one thing. At the far end of the room stood a massive, dark wooden cross, roughly hewn, crooked, and nailed straight into the floor. It looked more like a stake than a symbol of faith. Beneath it, embedded in the center of the floorboards, was a steel trapdoor, bolted, chained, sealed with rusted metal bars that hadn't been touched in years. Chris's voice changed. "Help me open it." He was dead serious. His eyes were lit up, wide and unblinking. There was a twitch to his movements, something wild and restless. We could be sitting on something big. Gold, supplies, maybe some crazy religious stuff. Come on, man. This could be it. I hesitated. Every instinct in me screamed no. The silence around us wasn't peaceful anymore. It was oppressive. Watching, waiting. I glanced at the cross again. It leaned slightly, as if pointing downward, toward whatever was locked beneath. "I'm not touching that thing," I said flatly. Chris didn't hear me, or didn't care. He was already rummaging through his pack, pulling out the camp hatchet. He began hacking at the chains. Every strike echoed like thunder inside the hollow church, louder than it should have been. Like the walls were angry, like they didn't want that sound inside them. I stood frozen, eyes flicking to the windows, half expecting to see movement outside. but the forest remained still, too still. Then the hatchet slipped from Chris's hand mid-swing. He cursed, but as he bent down to pick it up, he stopped. Suddenly, he just stood there, his whole body locked up, his shoulders tensed. He was staring at the trap door, at something I couldn't see. I stepped forward. "Chris?" Nothing. "Chris." Then he turned to me, slowly. His face was pale, his lips slightly parted, and his eyes, they weren't his anymore. It wasn't madness, it was something deeper, like hunger, like something inside the floor had crawled into him. He opened his mouth to say something, but only silence came out. Then, a sound, a low scraping from under the floor, like metal dragging against stone. Chris flinched. He looked around like he'd just woken up from a nightmare. His pupils dilated. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the cross. "Let's get the hell out of here," he muttered. I didn't argue. Outside, the sunlight felt wrong, dimmer, the trees closer than before. The path back was slower. Chris didn't speak for over an hour. And when he finally did, he said, it wanted me to open it. I didn't ask what it was. Back in Toronto, we tried to laugh it off, called it the cellar stash, like some lost treasure. But I noticed things. Chris stopped sleeping well. He'd stare at walls for too long. He had dreams. He didn't share them, but I could see it in his eyes. As for me, I still see that church in my head, perfectly preserved, waiting. The trapdoor still sealed, for now. But deep in the woods of Algonquin, beneath the rotting cross and the rusted chains, something is buried, something old, something watching. And I pray it stays locked away, because some doors, once opened, never truly close. The helmet by the shack. Some objects are better left buried. Some things are buried for a reason. It started as a break. 3 friends, tired of the city's wait, drove north into Harriman State Park for a quiet weekend. Me, Eddie, and Simon. We wanted firelight instead of streetlights, the sound of water instead of sirens, a chance to breathe outside the steel skeleton of Brooklyn. We found a spot off-trail, deep by a forgotten lake. No campers, no signs, just raw forest and silence. And that's where we saw it. A shack, squatting like a shadow at the water's edge. Weather-beaten, its wood warped and grey. The door hung crookedly on one hinge, swaying with every breeze. Something about it felt wrong, even then. It wasn't just abandoned. It was forgotten. But of course, we went in. The air was thick, musty, touched with a copper tang that clung to the back of your throat. Inside, the walls were lined with rusted iron hooks, some twisted into unnatural angles. A splintered table stood in the center, dark stains baked into its surface. One window, if you could call the hole in the wall that, let in just enough light to show us the filth. Simon joked it was an old hunter's outpost. Eddie muttered it felt more like a slaughterhouse. I didn't say anything. I just wanted to leave. But we didn't. We set up camp nearby, thinking nothing of it. By dusk, we had a fire going. Beer in hand, boots off. The woods wrapped around us in a calm hush. It should have been perfect. Then Simon tripped. He stumbled over something metal, half buried in the dirt behind the shack. We helped him up, and that's when we saw it. A helmet. Not a modern one, not even close. It was heavy, rusted black, shaped like a pyramid with narrow cross slits where eyes should be. There were faint engravings on the sides, symbols we couldn't recognize. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. And it felt wrong, not just strange, unnatural. Simon, of course, laughed it off. Medieval horrorcore, he said. Watch me summon some forest ghost. He raised it like a trophy, half serious about putting it on. Don't, Eddie snapped. Seriously, don't mess with that. For once, Simon listened. He set it down by a tree near the shack. We didn't speak much after that. The fire crackled, the woods grew darker, and somehow colder. That night, I woke to the sound of leaves crunching. I sat up in my sleeping bag, heart already racing. Simon's bag was empty. I grabbed a flashlight and woke Eddie. We scanned the trees, calling his name. Eventually, we found him, standing by the shack, alone, still. Simon, I called. He turned slowly. His face was pale, washed out in the flashlight beam, his eyes glassy. He looked hollow, like someone who had been crying for hours but didn't know why. I threw it away, he said. What? The helmet. It was looking at me. He didn't explain, wouldn't. We didn't push him. He walked back to camp like a sleepwalker, silent. His footsteps barely made sound. The next morning, he was different, withdrawn, nervous. He jumped at every noise. His hands shook while packing. When Eddie asked again what happened, Simon just muttered, I shouldn't have touched it. We didn't argue. We left. Didn't even eat. Just backed up and got the hell out of those woods. No one said a word during the drive home. Back in Brooklyn, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I searched online, looked up lost helmets, war relics, local legends. Nothing. No record of any shack near that lake. No mention of ancient helmets buried in Harriman. Nothing even close. I reached out on forums, paranormal threads, lost artifact boards. No one had seen or heard of a helmet like that. It was like it had never existed, or like it was meant to be erased. Simon stopped talking to us after that weekend. Slowly, then completely. He changed his number, left social media. We haven't seen him since. Eddie and I kept in touch for a while, but the conversations always looped back to that shack, that object, the things we couldn't explain. Eventually, even Eddie stopped picking up my calls. But me, I still see it, in dreams. Those cross-lit eyes, staring from the dark. The sound of metal dragging through dirt. Sometimes I wake up gasping, hands clenched, as if holding something cold and heavy. Sometimes I wake to the sound of a helmet clanging, just once, then silence. I've never gone back. I won't. But I can feel it, still buried somewhere in those woods, waiting. And I wonder, what if Simon didn't throw it away? What if it didn't let him? Because some relics aren't found, they find you. Thank you for joining us on Shadows After Midnight. If these tales chilled your bones, hit that notification bell to catch our next video. Got a story? Send it to yusefghani@gmail.com for a chance to be featured.